All right, everybody ready?
Good.
Everybody excited? So here we're going to bring on Judge Dettman. Like I said, somebody here, you don't want this guy to remember your name. You don't want to leave an impression on this guy that when he sees your paperwork or whatever, he's going to remember your name. So be on good behavior, listen to what he's got to say, and then, take heed of this. This is definitely, everybody we bring here in front of you, it's an opportunity and there's a reason you're hearing this certain thing that they're talking about. So everybody give him a little golf clap and welcome.
Thank y'all. See, I'm shorter than he is, so I got to move the microphone down, number one. Y'all should be up here where you're being blinded by these lights. Hey, my name's Mark Dettman. I'm judge of the County Court at Law here in Midland. Let me tell you how I like to approach things. I can stand up here and I can talk for an hour. That doesn't bother me. My background is I went to law school and I'm a lawyer, so lawyers like to talk about a lot. My other background is I went to seminary and I'm also a minister, and preachers like to talk about it. You don't want to hear me talking the whole time. What I want to do is if y'all have a question, if there's something that you want to know, I don't care if I'm in the middle of a sentence, raise your hand and I'm going to answer the question for you, okay? Because I want to answer the questions that y'all are interested in. Let me get a feel for everybody. How many people here are 17 years of age or older? A couple. So everybody else is under 17? Okay. Now that's where I'll start. I am the juvenile judge for Midland County. And the juvenile judge handles everybody that gets in trouble that's between 10 years old and 17 years old. Most people think if I get in trouble with 17, I'm still in the juvenile system. Not true. For most things in life, at least in the state of Texas, 18 is when you're an adult. You can't buy alcohol until you're 21. For most other things, 18 is what we call adulthood, because that means you don't have to live in your parents' house anymore. You can do what you want. If you want to enlist in the military, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Space Force, you can go do that on your own. If you want to vote, you can vote. So most things, you're 18 years old, you're an adult. But for the criminal justice system, which is something I do too, criminal cases, if you're 17 years old, I don't care if you're 17 years old in one day, and you get arrested for something, you're not going to Culver. You're going to Sheriff Criner's jail, like all the rest of the adults are. So just think about that. And if you're under 17, then you're going to be in my court. And we handle things a little bit differently in my court than we do in the adult felony courts, because our purpose is not to punish people. Our purpose is to rehabilitate people. So if you get in trouble as a juvenile, you have to be at least 10 years old. If you're under 10, that's your parents' problem, not mine. If you're 10 years old or 17, then when you get picked up, they may very well likely take you out to Culver. And y'all heard of Culver, right? Everybody's heard of Culver. They take you out to Culver. Then Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, either myself or Judge Moore will be out there. I'll be out there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I'll hear the cases of everybody that's out there, and I'll decide whether they get to go home with their parents or they stay out there at Culver. If they stay out there at Culver, then every 10 days I'll have another hearing and make another determination. So it's not some place that you want to be. That's the start of what happens if you're a juvenile. It could be picked up for anything. I see cases cover the whole gamut. Get picked up for carrying a gun or possession of marijuana, all the way up to aggravated sexual assault and murder. It's the whole thing. I sent a kid off for a 15-year-old for murder not long ago. And that's just a waste of life. You don't want to be 15 years old and go to prison for the rest of your life. But that's what happens sometimes. But if you get charged with those things, you're going to go to Culver first. The DA is going to look at your case and decide if you want to file it. Let me tell you what the DA is. Do y'all know what the DA is? Everybody here know what that? That's the district attorney. And that's who prosecutes cases in Midland, is the district attorney. So whenever there's a criminal case, that case is referred to the district attorney, and then one of the district attorneys review it, and then they decide whether to file it as a formal case. If they don't file it, that's the end of the case. If they do file it, whether it's in the juvenile system or whether it's in the adult system, then it goes through its steps to its conclusion. So somebody, once you're out of covert, they'll get the case and they'll look and decide whether they're going to file it. If they file it, then 9 times out of 10, it's going to come in my court. Some of them get deferred prosecution, which is what y'all are on deferred prosecution, right? Is that correct for everybody? Okay. Some juvenile cases still get that, but most of them don't. Most of them come in my court, and there's various things depending on the circumstances that can happen. Most of the cases, at least if it's a first offense, get some kind of probation, and they stay in their parents' home and have to do certain things on probation, like community service and whatever else is required, drug testing, the normal things of probation. There's some kids that, because their crime is more serious, or they don't do well on probation, they fail some UAs or get in trouble again, then we quite often send them off to an alternative placement. So we'll send them off to a juvenile facility, usually a secure juvenile facility. And what I mean by secure is it's like covert. It has a fence around it with barbed wire, and they lock everybody up in a cell at night. And we'll send them from there to try to rehabilitate them. And those places are usually about 12 months, 15 months, 18 months long to try to get them back on the right track. Some kids, it's a more serious offense, or if that doesn't work with them, we have an option to send them to a facility with the Texas Juvenile Justice Department until they're 19 years old. So, if you're 13 years old and you fall into that category, you might have to spend the next 6 years of your life in one of those facilities. And those are lockup facilities. Some of them used to be adult prisons. Some of them were designed to be juvenile prisons, but that's what they are. They're prisons for young people. You don't want to be there either. We have another option when people commit a serious crime, and that's called a sentence that it's a combination of things. We could give somebody up to 40 years under this particular provision. And the first, if I gave you 40 years when you're 15, then the first 4 years you go to TJJD, Texas Juvenile Justice Facility, until you're 19 years old. So you're down there for 4 years. Then you come back before my court and I look at the facts of the case. I see how you're performing down there. Some kids make a 180-degree turnaround. They're not a threat to society. Some of them have their college degree while they're down there. I may release those people on parole. Some of them don't do well down there, or the nature of their crime, they shouldn't be back out on the streets. So then I send them to adult prison to finish out the remaining 36 years of their sentence. That's something that you really don't want to be in that situation. There's other cases where we might have a 15, 16-year-old, because of the seriousness of their crime, we might certify them as an adult. Have y'all ever heard of that term before? Okay. What happens if say you're 16 years old and you commit a serious crime and the DA asks that you be certified, and you don't get a jury trial on it, it's all up to the judge, and I decide that you're one of the people that should not be in the juvenile system, you should be certified as an adult, and I certify you as an adult, then you're an adult from that point forward. And my bailiff will put handcuffs on you and put you in a jail cell until they transfer you either back to Culver till you're 17 or over to the county jail. And you'll go from there, and then you're going to be facing the same thing that every other adult defendant does, and that's up to, if it's the right kind of crime, up to 99 years of life in prison. So that gives you a general overview of the juvenile system. I'm telling you that because y'all are all young. Anybody have any questions? Y'all are awfully quiet. So, okay. Is there anything specific y'all want to hear about next? God, y'all were right. I was more animated than this when I was young. The adult criminal system, I'll just tell you what it would be like. Don't expect y'all to get in trouble and be in there, but let me tell you what it's like in the adult criminal system. And I think y'all are going to get a chance to tour Sheriff Criner's jail in a couple of weeks. Does that sound right to everybody? If you don't know that, I think that's on the schedule for y'all. But let's say that you're 17 years old And you go out and we had some people burglarize a gun store recently. Let's say you go out and burglarize a gun store and steal some guns. Now, you've committed burglary and you've committed theft of firearms. You've got some felony offenses against you. So when they catch up with you, and they will, because they are very, very good. We've got police officers, we've got sheriff's deputies, we've got Texas Rangers, we've got special agents with DPS. The FBI have talked to you all right. Okay. I used to be a federal agent when I was younger, so I know that those people know how to find folks, and they do. They eventually catch up with everybody. But you get in that situation, they're going to take you down to the county jail, and they're going to fingerprint you, and they're going to book you, and then they'll put you in a cell, and you're going to lose all your privacy. You're going to see what the cells are like when you go down there. You're going to lose all your freedom, and you're going to sit in that cell unless you can make bail. Bail is set for everybody. The last two juveniles that I certified as adults, I set their bail so they can get out if they wanted to. They weren't able to. One of them I set at $500,000, and the other one I set at $750,000. Most people don't have that kind of money to bond down to jail, but it's possible. It's certainly possible that they could. But that's what's going to happen. You're going to be in jail, and everybody's going to protect your rights. Everybody has a right to have a lawyer, and you won't be in there very long before, if you don't have the money to hire your own lawyer, that one of the judges will appoint a lawyer to represent you, and he or she will come down and visit you in the jail. But you'll probably sit there for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months until they indict you. And an indictment is a legal accusation formally charging you with a crime that is presented by a grand jury. I used to be a prosecutor for a long time here. I was an elected county attorney. And I've taken cases to the grand jury before, and it's a group of 12, 14, 15 people, and you just take your case in there and you present it. But there's nobody in there but me and maybe a law enforcement officer. It's not a trial. No defense lawyers in there. Nobody's in there but us, and I just tell the grand jury, hey, this is what so-and-so did. Excuse me. I think this is the crime they committed. I think they should be indicted for murder or aggravated assault or whatever the crime is. And so when I leave, I'm going to leave an indictment for you. And when I leave, they vote on it and they sign the indictment. Then you're formally charged. And once you get formally charged, then you're assigned to a particular court, whether it's Judge Robnett's court or Judge Robertson's or Judge Rogers or Judge Leonard's. One of those courts you're going to be assigned to, or one of our courts. And you'll have pre-trial dates where you have some hearings. And most cases are resolved by some kind of plea bargain. Some of them have a jury trial. Everybody in this country has the right to a jury trial. That means that if you're charged with something, and it doesn't matter whether you think you're guilty or not, if you don't, let's say the DA comes up to you and says, okay, I'll tell you what, if you want to plead guilty to this charge, I'll offer you 30 years in prison. And you go, I don't want to spend 30 years in prison. Who would, right? And so you say, I would rather have a jury trial. And that is your absolute right. And I've tried lots of jury trials in my life. So you go in there and they bring in a panel of maybe 75 people, maybe 100 people. And out of that 75 or 100 people, you choose 12 people to be on the jury. And then when those 12 people get in the jury box, then the state starts calling witnesses. They may call eyewitnesses that saw the crime. They may call the police that arrested you. They may call the detectives that investigated the case. They may call ballistics experts to say this person was killed with a bullet that came out of this gun. They may call experts from the Texas Department of Public Safety that said, yes, I tested those drugs, and that's methamphetamine in there. That's fentanyl in there, whatever it is that you're charged with. So there'll be all kinds of witnesses. And then the defense can put on witnesses too. You may say, I wasn't here when that happened. That happened on May 9th of last year. I was at my grandmother's house in in California for 3 months during that time. They may bring grandmother in from California, and the people that live across the street from grandmother and everybody else, and they go, I can testify that he or she was in California all during that time. Because that happens sometimes. Sometimes, it's rare, but sometimes they do get the wrong person, and so they might present that kind of evidence. And then when they're done, the jury goes back and deliberates, which means they go into their own room. The only people that are in there are the 12 people or the 6 people that are on the jury, and they talk among themselves, and then they decide. They render what's called a verdict, which is their formal decision, which has to be unanimous, which means if you've got 12 people, all 12 people have to vote the same way to convict somebody. Because that's one of the safeguards from our system. That if you happen to get convicted, that it's either the judge or the jury that sets your sentence. And if it's a first-degree felony, which are the most serious crimes that we have, like murder, aggravated sexual assault, aggravated robbery, things like that, the punishment range is a big one. It can be as low as 5 years in prison, up to 99 years in prison or life. And then if you want the jury to assess your punishment, you just tell the judge that's what you want. The jury will listen to the evidence and decide what should happen to you. Or if you don't want to do that, then the judge will set your punishment. And then you'll be transported to one of the, I think there's about 100 units now. They used to call it Texas Department of Corrections. Now it's the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institution Provision. But you'll be sent to one of those units to serve your time. And you might serve every bit of it. You might get half your sentence. You might get out on parole. It just depends how you behave in prison. Anybody have any questions so far? You've either heard all this before, or this is very boring to you. Maybe very boring. One time when I was young, when I was in high school, somebody came from the law school and wanted to teach us about the legal system. And all I remember is the very first thing he wrote on the chalkboard is, it all started with the Magna Carta. And from there, I don't remember a word he said because it was so boring. And I hope I'm not boring y'all too. I'm trying to give you an overview of what our criminal justice system looks like over there at the courthouse. That's basically how the criminal system works and how the juvenile system works, but that's not the only thing we do over at the courthouse. Every one of our courts has the authority to hear what we call family law cases. Family law cases are anything that may involve a family. On the good side, my wife and I adopted our 2 sons. My sons are 9 and 11 now, but we got them when one of them was a newborn and one of them was 2 years old. And so we adopted both of them. But you got to create that relationship. You've got to go through the court process. They got to make sure that your home is suitable, that you're suitable as parents, and then that the children need to have their parental rights, meaning their biological parents, have those parental rights terminated and then have somebody adopt them. So that's how we got our 2 kids, is we adopted them after their mother abandoned them. But that's one of the fun things we do is adoptions, because that's a happy day. Everybody likes adoptions. But the other things that any of us might do, there's one court that does it full-time, the rest of it do it part-time. So we'll hear divorce cases where people get married and their marriage doesn't work out and they get divorced. We hear those cases. We hear child custody cases where parents fight over kids all the time. It's very sad, but they might come into court every year wanting to change custody. I'm not going to do that to kids. Kids don't need to be bounced around from home to home. That's my particular opinion, but we hear a lot of those kind of cases. We also I hear a lot of probate cases and a lot of guardianship cases. Y'all probably don't know what probate is, but when somebody dies, they may have a will, they may not have a will, but we have a court to decide if someone dies, who gets their money, who gets their house, who gets their car, who gets their bank account, who gets their retirement account, who gets all those things. So I hear a lot of those cases, I hear guardianship cases. You've got people that, they just can't take care of themselves. Either they've got intellectual disabilities, or they've got physical disabilities, or they may be so old they can't take care of themselves anymore. And somebody comes in and goes, I want to be their guardian, I want to control their life, I want to be the one to decide how their money's spent, where they live, what the conditions are, where they live. So we do those kind of cases. And we do all kinds of civil cases, whether it's a car wreck, or it's a dispute over an oil and gas well, or whatever it is. Some of those can run up into the millions of dollars, but we hear lots of those kind of cases. There's another kind of judge over at the courthouse who's called the county judge. And that sounds like he would just be a regular judge like the rest of us, but it's not really the same thing. Have y'all heard from the city council or the mayor yet? Next week, okay. Our county judge, the county runs kind of like the city does. The city has a city council. At the county, we have a county commissioner's court, and there's 5 people on the county commissioner's court. 4 of those are county commissioners, and they're elected from certain districts in the county. And the 5th member of that court is the county judge. He's elected at large, and by at large, I mean everybody in the county gets to vote on him. And he's kind of wears 2 hats, because when he's not doing the commissioner's court, he can be up in his office doing judge stuff, like those probates I was talking about, wills and estates and those kind of things. But most of the time he spends he's essentially the mayor of the county. He's the county judge, so he's the leader of the county commissioner's court, and he makes the decisions on how the money's spent that we have in the county, whether that's for building more roads, whether it's for building a new courthouse, whether it's right now we're building a new jail. I think the jail we have now has 400 beds, and I think they're planning on building a jail for 900 beds. Did y'all realize that's how many people we have in jail here, or did you ever think about that? But that's a lot of people to have in jail. So they work on that. We're probably going to, Culver's getting pretty old. We'll probably be building a new juvenile facility before too long. Our capacity out of Culver right now is 20-something. We probably need the capacity to hold 75 or 100 kids out there. So that's probably in the works. But that's another kind of judge we have, is the county judge, and he's at the commissioner's court. So it's more kind of like a legislative body over there. There's a lot of offices over in the courthouse. If you go over there, we've got 11 floors on the county courthouse. And floors 6, 8, 9, and part of 10 are the courts. Everybody else is support systems. The DA's office, the district attorney has a whole floor at the courthouse. The county clerk has a whole floor. The district clerk has a whole floor. The clerk's job is to keep track of all the paper that we generate. So every time if you get filed on for a criminal case, you're going to have your own file, and it's going to have every court proceeding, everything that's ever happened in your case is going to be in that file. The district court and the county clerk, district clerk and the county clerk are the people that are going to keep track of those files. To tell you kind of what the volume that we have, I started here prosecuting cases in 1981, which for y'all is a long time ago. When I got here, we were on case number 30,000 when I got here. So in the history of Midland, we were up to 30,000 misdemeanor cases. And misdemeanors are things that you can't go to prison for. You can go to jail for up to a year, but that's the maximum you can go for. Misdemeanor cases are things like possession of marijuana, unlawfully carrying a firearm, drunk driving or driving while intoxicated, those kind of things. So when I got here in 1981, we were on case number 30,000. The last time we looked, I think we were on case number 185,000. So that tells you in the last 40 years, we've prosecuted 100, if my math is right, 155,000 people. That's the whole population of this town. If you looked at what the population of this town is now, but that's how many people have gone through our misdemeanor criminal justice system. But that's the kind of records that the county clerk and the district clerk have to take care of. We've got a whole floor dedicated to nothing but our IT department, so they're the ones that work on the computers and everything like that. When you go over to the jail in a few weeks. The sheriff's office has their own building over there. Because they don't have just the jail over there, but that's the headquarters for the sheriff, all the patrol deputies, all the criminal investigators or detectives they have with the sheriff's department. Culver has 2 buildings. One of their buildings is our detention facility. That's where we lock up juveniles that have to be locked up until they can have their hearing. And they have another building, which is the juvenile probation office, which is people that are on probation where their juvenile probation office is headquartered. We also have another building for road and bridge maintenance, so that's where we keep all the road and bridge equipment. Anybody have any questions at this point? Y'all are way too quiet. I don't know if I can stay up here for a whole hour. I've got close to 30 minutes left. Nobody has any questions at all. Okay. How can, because I'm dealing with a lot of criminal cases and a lot of juvenile cases, what difference does it make? What difference does it make if I get arrested and so what? I do 3 days in jail and then I'm done. Or I get arrested as a juvenile and then I get put on probation and finish my probation and then I'm done. What difference does it make? I'm 16 years old, I'm 17 years old. It doesn't matter because, who cares what happens when I'm, 30 years old? That'll be ancient history. No, it won't. You get arrested, you get prosecuted, your fingerprints, our disposition of your case is sent to the Texas Department of Public Safety in Austin. They have every one of those fingerprints, every one of your criminal records on file down there, and they put them in the computer. And they send the same stuff to the FBI in Washington, D.C. They take the same things. They take your same fingerprints. They take your same criminal records. They put it in their computer system in Washington, D.C. So it could be 50 years later. And a question comes up about if you've ever been in trouble before. It's right there. Anybody that needs to pull it up. There's restricted access to some of that, but it's not hard to get hold of. If I want to look up anybody that's ever been in trouble in the state of Texas and see what they got in trouble for, what they were prosecuted for, what the disposition of their case is, what kind of punishment they have, I have a subscription. This is when I was a private defense lawyer. It's easy. You just get a subscription to the Texas Department of Public Safety. You put that person's name in, you put their date of birth in, their whole criminal history pops up. So you may think, so what if I get in trouble when I'm 16, 17, 18 years old? Nobody's going to know about it when I'm 50. Yeah, they do. You're 50 years old and I'm an employer, and you come apply for a job with my company, and you fill out your employment application, and they're probably going to ask you if you've ever been in trouble before. As soon as you leave the office, they go, we'll let you know tomorrow. They're going to take your name, they're going to take your date of birth, they're going to type it into that DPS computer, and they're going to print out what you've ever been in trouble before. And if you lie on your application and say, I've never been in trouble before, you're not getting that job. And if they look and see something on there that you got in trouble for that they don't like, you're not getting that job. So that's why it's important to stay on the straight and narrow as best you can when you're young or when you're old or when you're middle-aged or anything. Now, there's breaks in there for people. The legislature has given some options for people that only get in trouble one time in their life. They give them an option sometimes. It just depends on the situation. To either get the record expunged, which means completely destroyed, so it's like it never happened, or they can have what's called a non-disclosure, which means it's sealed. It's still there, but if I go into the DPS computer and I type your name in and put your birth date in, and it's been sealed, it'll pop up and it goes, no record for this person. Even though there is one, if you have that option, it'll say no record for this person. And the reason it's not destroyed and only sealed is because if you happen to get in trouble again, the people that do have access to it are the district attorneys, the prosecutors, the county attorneys. They have access to that information. So if you get in trouble again and have a trial, they can bring it out in trial and tell the jury, hey, he or she has been in trouble before. Here's what they have been in trouble for. But there are some protections for you. There are some second chances for you because we understand people do things, not just when they're young, but when they're older. For lack of a better term, they do things that are stupid. I've done a lot of stupid things in my life, and I'm sure I'll do a lot more stupid things in my life. But they like to give people second chances, especially when they're young, to not mess their life up. And I'm a big believer in that too. I'm not saying yay or nay about alcohol, but I can't imagine anybody that's under 21 that hasn't tried alcohol before. It's just part of the growing up period. When I was young, it was different. When I was young, if you were in high school and they caught you driving around and beer in your car, and I grew up in Dallas, and a Dallas police officer caught you, they would go, what are your boys' names, and where do you live, and who are your parents? Pour that beer out, and if I see you out again, I'm calling your parents up, because in those days, your parents are institute a lot more punishment on you than anybody else would. Now, unfortunately, in the days, they don't do that anymore. Instead of just telling you to pour it out and don't do it again, they pretty much write you a citation or take you to jail for minor possession now. You don't need that following you around for the rest of your life because you're 18 years old and you're out drinking a beer. That's just too harsh. So there are those provisions that I talked to you about either eliminating your record or sealing your record. Those are the kind of situations where everybody's pretty lenient about getting that off your record and giving you a second start on that. No questions yet. Nobody wants to hear about all the juicy details we hear in divorce cases. Those are the worst cases. My wife used to be a court reporter in the family court. Do y'all know what a court reporter is? Have you ever seen on TV, there's a lady or a man sitting there and their fingers are moving on a machine? They write down every single word that people talk in a trial. There might be 2 or 3 people talking at once, and somehow they figured out how to write 2 or 3 people talking at once. And it's not like a typewriter. A typewriter's got all the letters in the alphabet on it. This one only has about 16 keys on it. But they have figured out a way to hit a couple of keys at a time. They might with one stroke hit a couple of keys at a time, write down 3 or 4 words at a time. So there are times that they can write down 300 words a minute. Y'all use a typewriter on your computer or a keyboard on your computer, right? Everybody does. I bet there's nobody in here that can do 100 words a minute, probably not even 50 words a minute on a keyboard. I don't know if you've ever timed yourself on that. But those court reporters can do 250, 300 words a minute easy. So there's just no way that anybody else can do that. But that's what they're in there, and they're writing all those things down. And the reason they write those down is because we have to have a record of everything that happens in court. We have to have a record of that. Now you might say, well, the easiest way to do that would be to just put a tape recorder up there and let the tape recorder do it, right? Or some kind of recording device, whether it's a phone or something. But they don't catch everything everybody says. Sometimes when people talk, it's not intelligible, it's garbled. You've got 2 people talking at once. You can't tell what one person said over the other, but those court reporters can write every single thing that's written that people say that happens in court. And the reason they do that is because if you have a trial, whether it's before a judge or whether it's before a jury, and you think a mistake was made in that trial, you have the right to appeal that. Y'all have heard about the Supreme Court hearing cases before. That's the top court. United States Supreme Court that hears appellate cases. But we've got a lot of appellate courts in Texas. There's 14 appellate courts in Texas. You can appeal your case where we live to the Court of Appeals in Eastland, which is, like it says, east of here, about halfway between here and Fort Worth. And they'll hear your case. And what they do is they look at the record that the court reporter typed up and then prints up in readable form, and the people write briefs on what they think the law is, and they'll have the record to look at to see if a mistake was made in the trial. And if a mistake was made in the trial, then they can reverse the conviction and send it back. They're not the last word on that. If you don't like a decision from the Court of Appeals, you can appeal it either to if it's a civil case, like a family law case, a divorce case, you can appeal that to the Supreme Court of Texas. If it's a criminal case, you can appeal that to the Court of Criminal Appeals of Texas, and those are the highest courts in the state of Texas, and they might review your case. And if you still don't like that decision, depends what the circumstances are, you might be able to appeal it to one of the 11 courts of appeals in the federal system. We happen to be in the Fifth Circuit, which is a federal court that hears every case from Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And if you don't like that decision, you might be able to appeal it to the Supreme Court. That's not automatic. That's discretionary with those courts. They take very few of those cases. I've had 2 cases in my lifetime of practicing law. I've had 2 cases in the Texas Supreme Court, one in the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and one that I took up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And they just don't hear that many of those cases, but occasionally they do. So that's kind of an overview of the whole criminal system and the civil system. So you know you have a right to a trial. You have a right to a fair trial. You have the right to have a jury listen to your case. And if you don't like the decisions, you have the right to appeal that case. And you've probably heard people give their rights on TV before. That means you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to make a statement if you don't want to. You have the right to have an attorney, so you have the right to have an attorney with you at every stage of any proceedings. There's a lot of constitutional rights that we have that is designed to protect people. That's the purpose of our Constitution. As far as the people that serve in the different capacities over at the courthouse, whether it's any of the judges that are over there, like myself, or the sheriff, or the county judge, or the commissioners, or the district clerk, or the county clerk, we're all elected. We're all elected officials. That means every 4 years, we go and get our name put on the ballot. We have to run for election. We just had an election that just happened, whether it was for the president, or we had some local races here. We had some school board races, and we had some city races. But that's how people get put into office, by elections. And that's a whole other story in and of itself. Running for office is its own unique animal. That's if you wonder how we ever get in those positions, it's every one of y'all that are 18 years or older that decide they want to go out and vote. Those are the people that get those positions. So whether it's President Trump, or whether it's me, or whether it's anybody else, we've got to run for office. We've got to put ourselves out there. We've got to let people vote on us. Still no questions from anybody. Carl, can you think of anything I need to address for these folks?
I got all kinds of questions.
Go.
So, I guess I didn't hear about, you were kind of in general about their position where they're kind of in favor of the position because they are on the first prosecution.
Right, exactly.
So what happens to somebody they normally put on deferred prosecution, and then that's noted on the record when they come back to see you? How is that usually seen by a judge that usually gives somebody their first opportunity?
Okay, I see it in juvenile cases a lot of times. I had 2 juvenile cases today. When we have a juvenile case, when we get to we have it in 2 stages. Stage 1 is what we call the adjudication phase, and that is, did you do it or not? Because if you didn't do it, if you're not guilty of it, that's the end of the case. You're done. I don't want somebody to be punished for something that they didn't do, either because it's the wrong person, or was a mistake of circumstances, whatever it is. If you didn't do it, you don't need to be there. So if you didn't do it, you're out the door, you're done. If you did do it, which is going to be way high up there, 90-some% of people that are charged with something did it. If you did do it, we have a second phase of that trial, and that's called the disposition phase. If you're an adult and you're charged with a crime, as I alluded to earlier, you can ask that same jury to listen to the evidence and to set your punishment. If you're a juvenile, if you're under 17, you don't have that option. I'm the only one that makes that decision. Nobody else makes that decision but me. But I want to hear about you. Before I make that decision about what to do with you, whether to put you on probation, whether to send you to a lockup facility for 12 months, whether to send you down to the Texas Juvenile Justice Department till you're 19, I want to know about you. That's the only fair thing to do. So I want to know. I want to know about your family situation. I want to know how you do at school. And the school gives me all your grades. I get your record on any absences. I get your record on tardy, everything. I've got all that when I'm in there. And one of the things I'm going to look at is, have you ever been in trouble before? And the juvenile probation officer has all that information. And I get it. And it just kind of depends. I'll get some of them and they'll go, this person's never been in trouble before. This is the first time they've ever been in trouble. So that's at one end. And so that's something I take into consideration. That's a good sign that somebody, it's just a quirk in their life that they got in trouble this time. On the other end, I might get, well, they've been locked up in cold for 12 times. This is their 15th time they've been in trouble. They've been on probation. They've been sent to an alternate facility. They've been to TJJD once. I get that, I'm like, we're just going to certify them as adult. Let them go to adult prison, be done with it. They're never going to change their ways. And then I got some that are kind of in the middle. And they look like, they've probably never been in trouble before, but the juvenile probation officers testify. He goes, here's their family situation, here's what they've done in school. And oh, by the way, they've been on deferred prosecution twice before. Well, then I'm kind of going to go, well, they got two chances, didn't they? Maybe it's time to get a little harsher with them so that they can learn their lesson and start working our way up the scale. Hope they don't do this again, because we've been nice to them twice on deferred. That didn't work. Let's try something else. Go ahead, Carl. You got another one for me?
Yeah. So these kids that they come into your court and all that, how many of them are associated with have problems with the law, and then have problems like attendance in school, does that go hand in hand that you see?
They all do.
They all.
They got a terrible situation at home, and especially nowadays. When I grew up, every kid that I went to school with had a mom and a dad at home. That was just normal. That's not normal anymore. You got a lot of single. My wife now was a single mom, raising two girls for a long time. That's a hard job, being a single mom, and that's hard on the kids too. Some kids unfortunately have abusive parents. Those are things that those are things that aren't kids' faults, but it can certainly have an effect on how they behave. They may act out because of that. I look at how they do in school. If they're not going to school, that is a terrible sign. Because if you're not in school, you're finding a way. Either you're not in school because you're getting in trouble during the day, or you're not in school because you're in trouble at night and you're too tired to go to school. So that's one thing I certainly do look at, is whether they're going to school or not. And I look at their school behavior too. You can pay me enough to be a teacher now, the way most people treat teachers. When I grew up, you acted up at school, they sent you to the principal's office, and the principal had about 5 or 10 baseball bats, and he carved into paddles, and he taught you a lesson, and gave you a few bruises on your backside, and sent you home, and you hoped your parents didn't took a shower that night and didn't see those bruises and ask you what you did at school, because they would give you the same thing at home. They don't do that anymore, but that's how they used to do it. But I still look at that. If you act up to a teacher, you cuss a teacher out, or heaven forbid you lay a hand on a teacher, I'm not going to look on that kindly at all. You got to respect those teachers, and if you're going to be like that, I'm not going to cut you any slack. Those are things I look at, and I also look at who you hang around with. Because We got a lot of gangs around here, juvenile gangs. I can't tell you how many we have. Some of them you've probably heard of, some of them I hear of, and I go, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. Why would you name your gang that? But we've got a lot of gang members, and those are the people that are trying to drag you down. When I see somebody's hanging around with a gang member, they don't know what's going to happen, but I know what's going to happen. You're hanging around with 3 gang members. They're your best bud. They're going to do whatever you want. If you want to get some drugs or alcohol or something, they'll get it for you. They'll be your friend. They're cool. Everything's cool until the law enforcement shows up and they're going to start arresting people. Those 3 gang members are going to go, he did it, she did it. They're going to throw you under the bus so fast you won't even know what happened. So I look at those things because the people that you're hanging around with tells me what you're going to do in the future. If you get put on probation in my court, I'm going to tell you who you can't hang around with. The people you got in trouble with, I'm going to go, you cannot hang around with those people. And if there's gang members, I go, you cannot hang around with those people. I'm going to tell you, you can't go to the mall because nothing good's going to happen there. I'm going to tell you, you can't be out after 9 o'clock at night. And I'm going to set those rules. You don't have to follow them if you don't want to. But somebody's going to find out you were hanging around with so-and-so. Somebody's going to find out you didn't go to school. Somebody's going to find out that you were at the mall or that you were out of your house after 9. A lot of times I'll put a GPS on somebody. The kids I have in my court, I'll put a GPS on their ankle, which is just what it sounds like. It's a device you put on your ankle and it tells me 24 hours a day where you are. So if you're not in your house at 9 o'clock like you're supposed to be, juvenile probation is monitoring it and will report back to me. And you do that, I know you're violated the rules of my probation. We're just going to lock you up for a while, or maybe send you to another place to lock you up. Either put you in Gopher for a while or send you off somewhere and lock up. Following the rules is an important thing, and it's no different than adult court. You're on probation in adult court, you have the same rules. Probation officer, just like they do for juveniles, they're going to call you in periodically, they're going to give you a UA. And if it turns out dirty that you're using drugs, that's going to go to the judge. If you're not reporting to the probation officer like you're supposed to, that's going to go to the judge. If you've got a curfew and you're not following it, that's going to go to the judge. And they can do the same thing as in the adult system. And I've seen it a million times. People get put on probation, they go, well, that's cool. You know, I can do probation. I'll still do drugs. I'll still drink. I won't get a job. Whatever it is, guess where they end up? Prison. Because they didn't follow the rules of probation. The judge says, not any chance. You're going to prison. But yes, in answer to your question, Carl, I look at every single one of those things, and every one of the judges look at the same thing. And I'll tell you, past behavior is a good predictor of future behavior, too. If I see you get in trouble 3 times, I'm pretty sure you're going to get in trouble for 4 times. I don't want you to. If I see you were hanging around with so-and-so, and every time you hang around with so-and-so, you get in trouble, I know the next time you hang around with so-and-so, you're going to get in trouble again. So that's why I say you're not hanging around with so-and-so. It sounds mean, doesn't it, that I tell you who you can be with and who you're not, but you get in the court system and we can tell you who you can hang around with, who you can't hang around with. We can tell you have to be at home at 8 o'clock. Some kids I put on curfew and I say, here's your rules. You can be out of the house when you go to school. You can be out of the house if you need to talk to your lawyer. You can be out of the house if you have a doctor's or dentist appointment. You can be out of the house when you go to church. If you're not doing any of those things, you're in the house. You don't get to go outside and play baseball with your friends. You don't get to go outside and play basketball with your friends. You don't get to go to movies with your friends. You don't get to go across the street and visit with your friends. You are in your house, except you're doing those things. And I've got a GPS on your ankle, and I know whether you're in your house or not. And if you don't want to do that, that's up to you. I'll find another place to put you. And some of those places have steel doors, and you're not going to get out past those steel doors. But, Carl, got some more questions for me?
I think that was pretty good. How about our other juvenile probation folks? You guys got anything that we need to touch on that you guys can think of? Okay. Well, whenever you're done, just close up. We'll have we you got like 3 minutes left, and you didn't
Okay.
have it.
Well, then my timing was pretty good. I hope I didn't bore y'all, but I appreciate y'all. And look, I say all those things, and I'll tell you that my filter, my view of the world sometimes gets kind of cloudy because the kids that come into my court are in trouble. They're not in my court for any other reason than they're in trouble and they're doing stuff that they're not supposed to do. But I know that that's not most people. I only see however many kids we've got in Midland. If we've got 50,000 kids in Midland, I might see 500 of those. That's a real small percentage because I know that the vast, vast majority of kids are doing what they're supposed to do. They're not getting in trouble. They're going to school. They're studying hard. They're being kind to their teachers like they're supposed to. And think about it, if you want to ever be mean to a teacher, what if that was your mom? If that was your mom up there teaching and some kid came and spit in her face, what would you think about that? I don't think anybody here would like that. If I was still young and somebody did that to my mom, somebody be getting a beat down pretty quick, and I think you all feel the same way. So think about those things. But I know most kids are good. I know they all good. And I know most of y'all want to be a good, successful career. You want to get out there and make some money. And, my kid's 11. He always tells me, Dad, why don't you just go out and buy a Lamborghini? I'd like to drive around with you in a Lamborghini. I go, Bo, I don't have the money to buy a Lamborghini, but if you want to study hard and you make that kind of money, you can get a Lamborghini when you get older. But if you don't study hard, that ain't going to ever happen. So I know most of the kids are good out here. I'm glad that most of the kids are good. And I'm proud of most of the kids in here. I like to see that, and I like to go to football games and see our kids out there trying so hard. So most of y'all I'm proud of. Even the ones that come into my court, I'm not really mad. It sounds like I'm pretty mean. But the reason I'm being mean is because I want you on the right track. I want you to be locked down in your house because I don't want you hanging around with this person that I know is a punk that's going to get you in trouble. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to protect you and get you back on the right track. So when you do get 17 years old, you don't end up in prison. That's not where anybody belongs. That's just not where anybody belongs. So we want you to be on the right track. And that's the same thing while you're in here. You're on deferred prosecution because everybody wants to give you a second chance. And they see the value in you and they want to give you a second chance and want you to get back on track and be done with this and be done with stuff like that gets you in trouble. So anyways, that's all I have to say. But I appreciate all y'all's time. Thank you very much. Carl, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. See you in 12 weeks.
Okay, that works. Thank y'all very much. See y'all later. Carl, thank you very much. I love people who ask questions.
Hey, yeah, I told him, I said, hey, you don't want
That's okay. I have nice questions.
it was great. I appreciate it. All right, I said, I'm good. We're good. Yeah, it just runs. You don't want to be on there?
So, okay. Hi, guys. Obviously, y'all do week off. Okay, good. All right. Okay. First things first, there's Mexico 172. If you haven't turned in your paperwork, I need it turned in. Next thing, observations. Next class I see, the first phone that I see come out, I will stop the class and whoever is speaking, and I will pick up every single phone in here. Am I understood? The contract that you signed when you came in to start class said that there was to be no cell phones. You need to be more mindful and respectful. Stop chit-chatting with each other in the middle when people are talking and giggling. I have no problem going and sitting in between y'all and separating y'all in the middle of class. Okay? Like I said, first things first, you gotta learn to follow the rules. You learn how those processes go, and this is your first day of learning those and how it's gonna be. Alright? Y'all gotten better, I will give y'all that. Y'all are getting a lot better on things, and that's a good thing. It is dark outside. I know everybody's ride is probably coming out. If your ride is here, go ahead and line up, and one of us will walk you out. I'm not letting you out of this building unless I see that one for a fact that somebody's here. So I'm either gonna walk you out or somebody's gonna walk you out, and you need to see the text saying that y'all are here if that car's telling you that's here. It's too dark for y'all to be outside by yourselves. Got it? Any questions? So if your ride's here, go ahead and line up and we'll walk you out. But if it's not, stay seated. Oh, and if your ride is not here and not outside, I will send you back in to wait.
So I think you what 3 or 4. So I keep record. So you these guys. These you can check with me now.